So cruising along at about 220 indicated, 12,500 feet, just coming up on the north side of Houston. I had gone about 70 miles and I'd burned just about 20 gallons of gas. The fuel plan at this point was approximately 45 minutes out of each tank. So they're 50-gallon bags on either side. We're burning right around 35 gallons an hour. So 40 minutes, 50 minutes from takeoff, you would have burned right down in that red zone that I had cleared during the FCFs at DeLand. And that was the plan for this, this being a long flight, trying to make it all the way past Houston, all the way to San Antonio. I was in full comfort mode, so the airplane was really well trimmed out. But I was maybe letting my mind wander. And the first clue was a side tone in the headset. You could hear it kind of coming and going. I did it a few times. You could see that I'm messing with my headset, trying to figure out where the noise is coming from. But that had helped sort of bring my alert back up, which is why I was able, I think, to catch that low fuel light, which was very quick. Again, going all the way back in this program, the reason that airplane was given up on by its previous owner, by the builder, was due to a flame out that he had to take all the way to a dead stick at the Palmdale Airport in Southern California. If you've ever been through Southern California, you know the Palmdale Airport is not friendly to transients. So I can imagine this was a very stressful moment for him. Therefore, I had always been very nervous about a flame out. So all this stuff that we're talking about, pulling gas out of tanks and making sure that we leave a lot of gas left in the tanks, all sort of comes back to that. Again, Quinten had been really helpful with this, not only installing his custom fuel sump system, but also briefing me not only on how the system works, but why he wasn't worried about flameouts, why he and his father used to regularly take the airplane right to zero fuel in order to get every last drop out of every tank. And it was because of that that I was really primed with a procedure should the low fuel light come on. So just a quick reminder on how that system works. It's a steel cylindrical tank up in the firewall forward with a low fuel light in it. So what's happening is the tanks, either tank, whichever tank you selected, is pumping into that sump. And then as soon as there's no gas coming from that sump, very quickly, I mean, the thing drinks a lot of gas and the header tank's only so big. So as soon as you're not getting gas anymore, the level in that header tank's going to change. And there's a sensor in the sump tank where as soon as the gas comes off the top stop, you get a low fuel light. And that's the, you have sort of seconds, maybe I think it's tens of seconds for you to get the fuel tank switched to the tank that has the gas in it. So in the event that you ever see that low fuel light, that, you're spring loaded to reach down and switch to the other tank. So strange side tone, fiddling with my headset, and then boom, we get a low fuel light. I had pulled my feet back off the rudder pedals. I had my, my left hand on the throttle, my right hand on the stick. So fuel selector is right hand, so I got to take my hand off the stick and switch from the left tank, which I'd been burning onto the right tank. It's a pretty tight cockpit, so that takes a second, and I was anxious to get that done quickly. I get it switched to the other tank, and the engine had rolled back. When I pulled my knees up off the floor and I had put my feet on the rudder pedals, I had actually pulled the throttle off. Not a big deal, but now I'm looking at like, okay, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe this is no big deal, and I add power to get back up to the cruise power setting. At which point I get the side tone in the headset again. Major voltage oscillations. Which had been there previously for the first time through this, but this time I'm more tuned up. I'm not just on a long cross country. And then I get that low fuel light again. That was probably enough to abort, right? So you got one tank, you're burning on it, and you get that low fuel light. We have some sort of a feed problem. We switch to the other tank, and we get a low fuel light again. You're like, okay, we got a feed problem here. We need to get this thing down. But the next thing was I had smoke in the cockpit. So unfortunately, you can't see it in the video. I remember being able to see smoke in the cockpit, but of course, with smoke, the biggest thing is that you could smell it, right? So it was that sort of acrid smoke, the real acidic, like electrical style smoke. So again, I'm seeing voltage oscillations. I'm seeing some sort of feed problem, smoke in the cockpit, and we're done, right? So power back to idle, and then start that sort of ballistic approach down from altitude to where I would be landing. If the airplane's on fire, we're going to be bailing out. We need to be bailing out by You know, I think the bailout altitude would probably be in this area like 4,000 feet, something like that. So every bit of 5,000 feet, you need to be ready. You start and work on going to the door. At 12,000 feet, I got time. But the biggest concern there is you don't want to descend through your bailout altitude. You don't want to get down to 1,000 feet, having been on fire, you know, for the last 2,000 feet, and being, man, I wish I would have bailed out of this thing. So you kind of want to be spring-loaded to start working towards the door if that's the case. The other side is most likely, you know, in the grand scheme of things, in this case, things are happening really fast, but in the grand scheme of things, it's very unlikely you're going to bail out of the airplane. So instead, you're going to probably be landing the airplane somewhere. I'm done with this flight. I'm done being in the airplane. It's very uncomfortable. So I need to find an airport. So it's sort of trying to switch my mindset from focusing on diagnosing an emergency problem to making sure I'm maximizing all that altitude I have to position the airplane geographically close to whatever the closest airport is. So trying to figure out, diagnose the engine, but then it's very quickly, you know, nearest button, and then I'm scanning through local airports to make sure that there's an airport that can do the job. Remember back to our previous thing, how long does the runway need to be? In this case, the airport that was closest was the Cleveland Regional Airport, which was almost directly below me. It didn't have Jet A, but the runway was long enough, and I said, okay, that's it, I'm making my decision, and just started trying to get ahead of what was going to come next. So get on the AWAS, check the winds.
Cleveland Municipal Airport, automated weather observation 213 Zulu, weather, wind 270 at 8, visibility.
Get on the frequency and start listening to the traffic.
Cleveland traffic, airway 68 for Echo, turning final 34, touch and go.
The traffic is really busy, so as soon as I pulled up the frequency, you could just hear, you know, everybody's like a Sunday, typical Sunday stuff where everybody's going flying. Not going to make it easy to get in, but maybe it means there'll be some resources around in the event that something happens. It's sort of a nightmare, the thought of landing somewhere unassisted. So I come from Mojave, and then racing at Reno. In both those cases, it's an environment where people expect weird things to be happening with airplanes. So therefore, everybody's sort of spring-loaded. Boy, I've said spring-loaded a lot in this description, to the idea that abnormalities can happen, right? So in the event, like when the Quickie accident happened, we didn't have fire on site. I think I was still in the cockpit when Justin rounded the corner where he could see me. In the case of Reno, in my case, I've had 3 or 4 real emergencies at Reno, and I've never had the fire truck not there when the airplane came to a stop. This is a very different situation. We're talking about landing at an unfamiliar airport with an airplane nobody's seen before. Nobody knows what normal operations are. And you could be potentially showing up, you know, worst case would be on fire. You could have, you know, major engine problem, blah, 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 blah. There's a balance between, you know, if you go into a big airport and you shut down commercial traffic on a major runway and just to find out there's nothing actually wrong with the airplane, that's going to not be awesome. And then on the other side, you could land at a little tiny airport where they don't have any operations today, and you find yourself, you know, best case standing next to a burning airplane, or worst case upside down in a burning airplane with no one even around to you know, call your wife, let alone help you try to get the thing off you. So there's sort of a balance point there as far as what's the right airport to land at. So when I heard all the traffic at Cleveland, I decided to go ahead and push in that direction. It seemed like I could make that work. So arriving at the Cleveland airport, it's important we talk about the sort of ballistic approach that I was on. So I had lots of power in the airplane, had an event, pulled power back, tried to add power back in, had an event, and pulled power back. So now I've been at idle basically since the problem had showed up. So I arrived at the airport treating this like I had some sort of a fuel feed issue that was combined with some sort of electric issue. Probably something had caught fire. It's very complicated emergency, sort of a worst case scenario, and I just can't get the thing on the ground fast enough. So meanwhile, you're trying to mix it up with normal traffic. So it ended up that there was a guy just on final as I sort of arrived on a high downwind. So as I came up to low key, he was on the runway and sort of taking his time getting off the runway. So I remember saying something specifically on the radio to the effect of, hey man, you know, can you get off the runway?
And Cleveland Municipal, the traffic on short final, are you a full stop? 34, actually. Cleveland Municipal, experimental 151 Papa Kilo. We're just turning left base and we'd like the traffic get off the runway if they could.
Again, and this is a recurring thing for me, I'm not very good about calling emergencies. Again, you never know how much to elevate the thing. If you're if you're flying, flight test for Boeing and you've got the world's resources at your fingertips, if you're an F-22 or a C-130 and you have the world's resources at your fingertips, you may be more apt to call an emergency. In this case, little home built, you're probably just inviting a bunch of help you don't need. Anyway, so arriving at low key, reached up and threw the gear handle down.
Left base, and we'd like the traffic get off the runway if we could.
Traffic, Airway 68.
This is pretty standard approach for me, so all I've done sort of is by recognizing I may not have full power. I'm a little high. To this point, I haven't run much power, but I'm also pretty fat. So fat being high on energy. So I throw the gear out, and very quickly the hydraulic pressure drops to 0. And the hydraulic pump doesn't grab it to pick it back up, to pull the pressure back up. Meanwhile, the gear came out of the wells, but they didn't hit the down locks. So I'm like, oh. So this is as I'm at low key, so parallel to the runway, opposite heading of the runway, about to make that final 180-degree turn to land. And this was sort of the most critical part of the whole deal, because I was fat enough on energy, and now with the gear not totally out, I didn't have the drag that I needed to get down and get stopped. I needed the drag of the gear, and then I needed the drag of the flaps. So with all that monkeying around as I made my way around to sort of try to diagnose what's going on, I'm getting fatter and fatter and fatter. So I make the decision to push the nose down and try to land. Not only am I going to land on 3 unlocked gear, but I'm also going to be fast. Not good. Next step is I can do the shimmy shimmy cocoa pop, right? I can pull some G and I can do some lateral stuff and try to get the gear out, but all that's going to do is delay my touchdown, and now we're talking about using even more of a, not the longest runway in the world. At this point, I made the decision that I think I'm most proud of for the day, which was to do a real quick sort of big picture assessment, right? So you're so focused in tactically on what's going on that it's easy to just fix the next problem, the next problem, the next problem, instead of just backing up and taking sort of a broader approach. And so as I'm turning base to final, I'm thinking to myself, man, so I've got a fuel feed problem on the left tank, a fuel feed problem on the right tank. I've got voltage oscillations that are all over the place. I've got an engine that won't make power, and a smoke in the cockpit. Man, that just seems like a lot of things to go wrong all at once. It seems very unlikely that on top of all those things, we also have a hydraulic problem. In the context of everything that had happened that day, right? The hydraulic system had been talking to me all day, and then the reason why that airplane had been in the dirt with the owner some 3 years before was because of this hydraulic pump that we briefed in previous videos that's not quite up to the task, that had failed. And it hit me. I'm like, man, a hydraulic pump failing could nuke the whole electrical system. It could grab the RPM and drag it all over the place. It probably would make some smoke, and it would certainly add up to the situation that I'm in right now. Maybe that's what's going on. So now's the critical moment, right? Because if I go full idle or even reverse to sort of try to get the airplane down, I'm committing to, at least I know I'm going to make the airport, right? If I stand the power up and the engine takes some of the power but not enough, and then it flames out, and I'm going to end up even more off the weeds. The thing about Cleveland Airport is it's surrounded by tall trees, right? It's not like Mojave where you're just going to end up on a dirt road somewhere. You're going to end up, like, worst case scenario, we're going to total the airplane. So I made the decision to take the gamble and try standing the power up. Stood the power up, and it took the power. Whew. Awesome. Tremendous.
Cleveland Municipal Traffic, experimental 151 Papa Kilo. We're going to have to make this a upwind pass for 3-4. I'll get a gear situation sorted out.
So as I'm climbing out, I did the shimmy shimmy cocoa pop. I get 3 green lights. Fantastic.
Cleveland traffic 868 for Echo, turning left base 34, Cleveland, touch go.
In Cleveland traffic, experimental 151 Papa Kilo, just coming back on the left downwind here. And we're going to try this again, 3-4.
Traffic 868 for Echo, turning final 3-4, touch and go.
Now I'm replaying in my head what the owner had described from his hydraulic failure. And the big thing with him was the tail wheel had appeared to be locked but had not been locked. So when he touched down, the tail wheel collapsed and the airplane lost control and went off into the weeds, resulting in some damage to the back of the airplane, mostly from the tail dragging around in the dirt. So again, I'm looking at the overall system, trying to get that broader picture. I'm like, nitrogen is cheap. I'm going to grab that emergency extend handle, I'm going to pull it, and at least that way I'm positive that I've done all that I can to try to get 3 green before touching down.
Final, RNAV 27, full stop, Houston Southwest.
Because I'd been inspecting it all day, I had a pretty good idea of what the mechanism looked like, right? There was the inspection 2 days ago, then there was that day where I'm really thinking about emergency extension, and it's like a, 1.5 inch, 2 inch long arm, turns 90 degrees or so to open the valve on the bottle, which is mounted in the right gear bay. So I was expecting, right, you pull it and it would come out, accordingly, whatever, this much, right? I pulled it and it sort of started to act right, and then all of a sudden it popped out further. By the time I got it about 6 inches out, I was pretty sure that something had failed. So I went back to flying the airplane. I said, you know what, I don't want to be the guy that thought he broke the emergency gear handle and didn't. Let's make sure that we've gotten all the air out of the system into the down locks that we can. So I grabbed it again and pulled it the rest of the way out.
Cleveland traffic, experimental 151 Papa Kilo is just about to enter left base, R34.
Turned out a short final. There was a black Cessna holding short of the runway, and as my bandwidth opened up, I realized there was still somewhat of a chance that something exciting would happen here in a moment.
Cleveland traffic, experimental 151 Papa Kilo, short final 34 in the Cessna holding short. If you could just keep an eye on this for me, be ready to call the authorities if there's an issue.
Interesting to see how your brain oscillates as you work through the emergency. This is an unusually long emergency, right? So it's almost 12 minutes from when the event occurred to when I'm in the chocks at the Cleveland airport. So in that time, you go from sort of really low cross country, trying to just pass the time, to whoa, engine's going to quit, to okay, the engine's running, to smoke in the cockpit, to smoke goes out, and we found an airport, we found back to the airport area, then gear won't go down, and then gear is down. So trying to figure out what is the reality, right? I mean, one strategy would be that if anything happens, it's call emergency, call ATC, roll the fire trucks, yada yada yada. Or once I get on the frequency, emergency, make sure everybody knows. But frankly, you don't even know what response you're going to get at a little airport like that. I said gear emergency, or I said gear issue on the radio, and it didn't get much of a response. So it could be they call the fire trucks. It could be they all go out and get the popcorn and watch. Nothing against anybody in Cleveland, Texas, but just it goes back to I think the most important thing is just realizing how awesome it is to have the majority of the flight tests that I do be at airports like Mojave and Reno, where people are primed and ready to go, as opposed to being out in the an unfriendly airport, which I think is the biggest theme of this whole project, is what it means to be at an unfriendly airport. All right, so we just landed here at Cleveland Municipal in Texas. I was cruising along at 12,000 feet and everything was going great. And then I got smoke in the cockpit, followed by a bunch of flashing lights on my fuel panel. So I mentioned earlier, now it really comes to fruition, right? The weird airplane taxis up to the pumps at Cleveland, a small airport in rural Texas, and it draws attention. So I had very quickly had 2, then 4, then 6 people surrounding around the airplane, and there's a critical moment there where you need to establish for people that are just there for novelty, right? They don't know that something's going on, that hey, I've had some issues and I'm going to need some help. So a guy walked up on the left wing, and I say. He says, "Oh, what cool airplane," or whatever, and I immediately said, "Hey, is there a puddle underneath the airplane?" to try to raise the awareness. It's going to take a second for me to get out of the airplane, and the quicker I can establish that, hey guys, I might need some help, the more people might be available, the more people there are, the better chance there's the person there with the resources you need. This is a new experience for me, being stranded at an airport I've never been to before. Use the emergency extension. So that's the emergency extension handle there. Hydraulic fluid, one of the 2 on the tail wheel. Not clear where it's coming from, but you can see it's all down the belly, and then you can see this puddle is formed. You can see the drips on the belly like that, and then there's the drip going down the belly. Then we come around here, look at the emergency extension circuit. So here's the nitrogen bottle blowing the gear down. You can see that that's the cable that you pull to open the valve. You see that the bottle still has air in it. If you follow the cable down, You can see here where the cable broke. It appears that it failed. Probably something to do with this rubbing on something, but it wasn't much good. Didn't do its job. You could also see where the as the pump had failed, it actually chucked soot out between the cowling and the fuselage side and the gap there, and had covered the wing root and the side of the fuselage with soot, assumed to be from dust from the brushes exploding on the hydraulic pump, probably where the fire smell came from as well. And now we're gonna do the how to get the airplane out of an unfamiliar airport thing. Yeah. So I've never done this before, being stranded at an airport, unfamiliar airport, and an airplane doesn't belong to me, especially one that's worth so much money. So trying to figure out sort of on the fly what's the right move. First step, of course, is to call the owner. So got him on the phone right away. He was in surgery, so it was a little bit delayed getting a hold of him. So then I called Quinten and talked through the engine stuff with Quinten. Then Lance called. Once the owner, Lance, called, we walked through it, and he was real cool about it. First of all, you know, since he had been through a similar deal with the hydraulic pump failing for him, sort of was a known thing what was going on, and therefore it was a little bit less intimidating. But also he recognized that, like, well, we weren't going to get it solved today, and that I should just get on the road, which I thought was pretty cool. So his point was, you know, get the airplane secure and get out of there, get on a plane, get to Houston, get on a plane back to California. So that became my priority. So we got ratchet straps here at the tow bar. We're going to go to the up locks on the mains and see how this works. So started looking around, you know, the crowd had formed, a couple people there from the airport. Turned out there was a couple maintenance operations there on the airport, a couple people to choose from. But the biggest problem was just finding hangar space. So there was only one hangar that was available, belonging to a man named Chris Bahan. He's a mechanic there, based at the airport. He had to displace a Bonanza in order to put the airplane in there. There's the airplane there. You see the big Lone Star Aircraft Services depot there. And the displaced Bonanza that we took out of its spot. And then Chris's shop is here. And again, the airplane's here. Say hi, Chris. Hello. He had some history with Mustangs, working for the Collings Foundation, so he was excited to be a part of the project, and I was happy to have help. So then there's the awkward deal. Chris seems like a good guy, but at the end of the day, you know, this is an airplane that's valued at near $500,000, and I'm getting ready to hop on a plane and fly, you know, 1,000 miles across country, leaving it effectively with a stranger in a town I've never been to. So, you know, how do you get comfortable with that? So anyway, took a lot of photos, made sure that the owner and Chris had talked on the phone, make sure that the owner had, you know, cell phone, email, etc. for Chris, and then try to make some other contacts at the airport just in case something weird happened and we'd have someone else there to deal with. Not really having any idea how long it would be before I came back, depending on what the plan was. And then very quickly, I was on my way to the Houston airport. The line boy or line girl, Claire, she works at the airport there. She's a commercial pilot, you know, pumping gas to pay for it all, which I think we can all relate to. She gave me a ride to the local Walmart, where my adventure really started. So this is a problem I've not had before. I have now been dropped off by the lovely Claire, who works as a line person at the Cleveland airport, at the Cleveland Walmart. And now we're going to try to find a way to get to Houston. See how this goes. You never know when a day like this starts how it's going to end, and to be sitting in front of a Walmart in a town in Texas I'd never been to before was awesome. But sure enough, caught the first thing smoking out of Houston, and I was back at the house in time to eat breakfast with the boys. So that's where I'm going to leave episode 3 of the LongNoseThunder Re-Reflight video series. In the next video we'll cover what we did to go back and get the airplane and get it safe to fly and get it on its way to San Antonio. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around all the way here to the end of the video. Please meet me in the comments if you see anything that makes you nervous, or you feel like you don't understand. Maybe I didn't explain something clearly. I'm just an engineer after all. But regardless, thanks for coming along, and airplanes are cool.